Hi everybody. In 1996, a man from coffee planting family in Karnataka opened a small cafe in Bengaluru. He did not just want to sell coffee, he wanted to change the way Indians thought of stepping out, sitting down and having conversation. Within 2 decades, he built the India's largest coffee chain with 46% market share. The brand was so powerful that for millions of Indians, going for coffee meant going for CCD. But after 23 years, in 2019, this great franchisee just avoided bankruptcy and the man that built it walked into the river and did not come back. The question is, how can a company with 46% market share with a brand that defined an entire generation go completely bust? Was this collapse sudden that nobody could have predicted, or did it unfold slowly, leaving behind a trail of warning signs? And lastly, what are the lessons that we can learn from it? In 1996, CCD opened its first coffee chain in India. From the very beginning, it had the structural advantage that most cafe operators never have. That advantage was vertical integration from coffee plantation to coffee drinks. Usually, most cafes buy coffee beans from planters to roast, brew and then sell. But CCD had its own plantation and had its own processing facilities. This provided 3 benefits. Firstly, it helped reduce the cost of raw materials. Coffee is roughly 15 to 20% of cafe's total cost. A 20 to 25% advantage on that input sustained over thousands of outlets provided a meaningful margin difference. Secondly, consistency is one of the hardest problems for any cafe. Coffee in Bengaluru should taste the same as in Patna. So procurement of coffee beans in terms of quality, harvesting and storage conditions should be consistent. One bad harvest or one careless supplier can change the product at different outlets. CCD had the advantage that it had only one supplier, which is itself, and that provided consistency in quality. And thirdly, with no vertical integration, cafes who want to open 200 new outlets must first secure supply contracts. That is, negotiate prices, lock in the volumes and manage multiple vendor relationships. Thus, incremental cost of adding new outlets for cafes without vertical integration is far higher than the one with vertical integration. So, this genuine structural advantage helped CCD to capture 46% of market share in India by 2015, with cafe footprint being nearly 4 times larger than the cumulative footprint of the next 4 competitors. But here's the catch. We also need to understand how the company was structured. CCD business was situated inside a company called Coffee Day Global Limited. Now, as discussed earlier, the vertical integration gave CCD a genuine competitive advantage. But here is where the story takes a turn. The promoter took the logic of integration and extended it to the businesses that had absolutely nothing to do with the coffee business. He built IT parks, financial services company, entered logistics and also hospitality and resorts business. So there were total 5 businesses sitting under their own separate companies, and all 5 of these were placed under a single holding company named Coffee Day Enterprises Limited, or CDEL. And it was CDEL that was listed on the stock exchange, not the coffee business directly. Now here is the critical point. The coffee business was genuinely good, strong brand and healthy margins. If this business had existed on its own, it would have been a good story. But it existed inside a structure that also contained 4 other businesses with completely different stories. IT parks do not become profitable overnight. You first need to spend hundreds of crores in building the infrastructure. Then you have to wait for months and years for tenants to move in and for rental income to reach a level where it covers the cost of infrastructure. So until that day arrives, the IT parks are consuming cash, not generating it. Similar is the case with resorts and hospitality service business. Also, logistics is a commoditized business with low margins and no pricing power. And financial services business is adding complexity without adding any strength. So essentially, what we have inside CDEL is one cash generating business and four cash consuming businesses. This makes CDEL overall a bad quality business. Every year, company needs fresh capital to keep running. Every year, the question was same: where does the money come from? To fulfill this capital requirement, management did two things. First, they borrowed money from the private equity investors, and second, they loaded the holding company with debt. These two events turned the bad quality business into a fatal one. Let's understand how. Let's talk about the first event. In 2010, three private equity investors came together and invested $200 million, which is roughly 1000 crore rupees at that time, in a resort business for 34% stake. When PE investors put money into a company, they do not just simply receive shares, they also set contractual protections that guarantee their profits. During 2010, these contracts typically had three specific clauses. A, an assured return clause which guarantee PE investors a minimum return typically of 15 to 20% IRR regardless of how the business performs. B, if satisfactory exit is not available, then investors can avail a put option to sell their shares back to the promoter at a pre-agreed price and at a pre-agreed date. And C, if PE investors could find a buyer for the entire company at a price they find acceptable, they could force the promoter to sell the entire company. Now coming to the second event, by 2015, company had accumulated a total debt of more than 6,300 crores rupees. Even at an interest rate of 11%, the annual interest cost would come out to be approximately 700 crore of rupees. Even though the coffee business had high margin, it also had required high reinvestment rate to grow, and the remaining four businesses were not contributing any cash. So every year CDEL was earning less in free cash flow than it owed in interest, and that gap was being filled by more borrowing. The promoter attempted to solve both the problems by taking the company public in 2015. PE investors could sell their shares in the open market, exit at a profit, and market would also provide some liquidity to the business. But market did not cooperate. The IPO was priced at rupees 328 a share in November 2015, but share price never went above rupees 374 a share till January 2018. The IPO had failed to deliver the exit to the PE investors, and so they turned to the only option available to them, the contractual put option, that is the right to sell their shares back to the promoter. By 2018, promoter had very little room left. CDEL was already carrying rupees 6,300 crores of debt. Promoter had already pledged 75% of his holdings in CDEL, and promoter has sold his entire stake in Mindtree, an IT company in which he was invested. So there was no money left for the promoter to buy back the shares from PE investors. At this desperate time, promoter diverted the cash from the subsidiaries of CDEL to his private company. This money was then used to fund the buyback. In essence, what happened was that the promoter used the money of publicly listed companies, which is essentially the money of shareholders, to service his private obligation. This act, when became public, created a credibility problem for the company, and shares started free fall. Shares of CDEL tanked 43% in just 3 days, and with that fall ended the story of India's largest and most iconic coffee business. This brings me to the 3 lessons that can be learned from this case study. Lesson number 1. The coffee business of the CCD was a great franchise, but it was not standalone. It was sitting inside a holding company that also owned IT parks, resorts, and logistics, all of which were loss making. A good business was used to fund the bad ones. The lesson here is that while evaluating a company, don't just evaluate the business you can see, evaluate the entire structure in which that business sits. A brilliant business sitting inside a bad structure can be destroyed. So before investing in any holding company, map all the subsidiaries and associates. Lesson number 2. The most dangerous debt in the company is the debt you cannot see in the balance sheet. CDEL's annual report disclosed the consolidated debt of around 6,500 crores as of March 2019. But there was additional layer of financial stress sitting outside the financial reports. The promoter had pledged shares worth rupees 3,500 crores. So it is necessary to look at the few specifics like pledged percentages of promoter and related party transactions. And lastly, lesson number 3. The promoter of CCD was a visionary entrepreneur. He built a remarkable brand, but he could not stop. Every success became the justification for the next expansion, and each capital requirement was met with debt. This turned the position of power to the position of desperation. So ambition is not a problem. Ambition without discipline is. Now, here is the practical framework that you can take. First, map the full promoter debt ecosystem, not just that of a listed company. Go to the BSE or NSE website and look at the quarterly promoter pledge disclosures for any company you owe or are evaluating. It is publicly available and updated every quarter. If the pledge percentage is above 25%, start asking questions. If it is above 50% and rising, treat it as a serious warning signal. Second, read the related party transaction section in the annual report with the same attention you give to the profit and loss statement. Look specifically for intercompany loans and advances flowing from the listed subsidiaries to the promoters owned privately entities. If a listed company subsidiary is giving loans to a private company owned by the promoter and that private company has no clear business reason to need that money, you are looking at a potential fraud. And lastly, when you see a complex holding company structure with multiple businesses, always value them separately before valuing them together. VG Siddhartha built something remarkable, a brand from nothing, a cafe culture that did not exist in India before him. But the market does not grade on intention, it grades on structure and discipline. The cafe was still full on the day everything ended, customers are still ordering coffee, and the brand was still alive. But what had collapsed was everything built around it: the debt, the obligations, the private pledges, the fund diversions, and the trust. And that is the final lesson of this case study. And that brings me to the end of this video, and I hope this video was valuable to you. If this video provided value, then please like this video and subscribe to this channel for more such investment case studies. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.